We have Lorin here with us today, and I am super, super excited to talk to you. So I would love for you to just start off and kind of describe your story, how you started out with your dietary restriction, what it's like to live with it now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. So I've struggled with dietary needs basically since I was a young girl, around 10 years old. I started having issues with dairy, and having issues with acid reflux, and went through a whole process of doctors with trying to find what was wrong with me. And eventually we just figured out I had acid reflux. But I cut out dairy on my own because I noticed that helped me a lot. So I've been dairy free for, I'm 30 now, so 20 years. And then I got diagnosed with celiac disease in 2016. So I'm coming up on 5 years with my celiac disease. So between the gluten, um, having being gluten free and then being dairy free, I've also over the years developed, which I think I've developed a soy intolerance due to like leaky gut and having an unhealthy gut over the years. So I've done elimination diets and figured out that I've got a soy issue. So I'm working on right now trying to heal more so that I can introduce, I mean, not like I feel like I need to have soy because I don't really care. Like, oh, I wish I could have soy because I'm fine to not have soy, but I do have those. So I eliminate gluten, dairy, and soy from my diet. And it's taken a long time, and it's been a long process, and it's been, yeah, really emotional. It affects like it affects your relationships, and it affects, you know, a lot of aspects of your life when you have food dietary needs. So it's been a journey, but it's been good. I'm feeling good, and I'm just glad that I know what I've got going on and how I can help myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how did you originally find out that you had to like take out both soy and then get tested for celiac even?
So I got tested for celiac disease by like just random. I had a bladder infection that had developed really bad to the point where I wasn't on any medication. I just thought I was like having bad UTIs. And then I went from that to like, I'm going to die. I think my appendix exploded. So I went into the ER, and I did have a bladder infection or a kidney infection. I can't even remember now. It was so long ago. And they did a stool sample there, and they were like, oh, you have blood in your stool. Let us just do a scope and check your small intestine. And so they went in because of the blood, and they found that I had multiple bleeding ulcers in my stomach and in my intestines. So they did a biopsy, and then they told me I had celiac disease the next day. So it sucked because I didn't go into the ER thinking, oh, I'm going to get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease today. I just thought that I had, I was in a lot of pain. I thought maybe it was my appendix or something, but it was just the kidney infection. But turns out I had ulcers and blood and all of these things going on from years of undiagnosed autoimmune disease.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you talk about like how it affected your relationships and your life and like what changes you needed to make?
It still affects my relationships.
I know it totally does.
So luckily I had just been married for about a year when I got diagnosed, and we were actually trying to get pregnant during that time. And we had been trying for several months, 6 or 7 months. And then after I got diagnosed, when I cut out gluten, I got pregnant a couple months later, which was a huge blessing. And like, who knows if that was related to the pregnancy? It could have been, who knows? But I mean, it could have affected my infertility issues that I was having for a while. But mostly, it affects you socially. It's such a big social issue because everything that we do to connect with others is surrounded by food. And, you just don't even at that time in 2016, I just was like, I don't know what to do. And I didn't get the help that I needed because doctors don't know. Doctors don't know what to do. They're just like, eat gluten-free. And I'm like, what does that mean? But it just affected me, like it made me really self-conscious because I'm going to someone's house and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try and figure out and bring my own food. And even now over the years, I've learned which friends and which family members I can trust and which ones are careless and which ones, just really don't think about it or they're not conscious of it. And so I get sick when I go there. And so over the years, I've learned, which people I'm like, okay, we're going to their house for dinner. I know that they're going to take all the precautions that they know I need, and then others where I'm like, I'm just going to bring my own food, which, you know, affects you emotionally, because you're like, I wish I could participate in this yummy meal or this traditional thing, and you can't. So you're trying to find ways that make you feel included, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of mental work too.
Right. And you don't want to like feel like a burden. So you're like,
Yes.
I'll cover it.
But really, I'm like, can you please just try? Can you please just try to like make me feel included, you know?
Really, it's a huge mental game. And so yeah, so yours is really severe. So can you talk to me about your cross contamination and how sensitive you are to that in terms of
Yeah.
allergens?
So I feel like it's taken me a couple of years for my body to like really realize like how severe the cross contamination was. I feel like in the first year I was still like in the honeymoon phase, and I was like getting contaminated here and there, but I wasn't really feeling the effects of that until I was like 100% like strict, and I wasn't going out to eat anymore, and I wasn't eating other people's places, and my body really got to like get clean. And then once I experienced my first like cross contamination, or actually eating straight gluten, which has happened like 3 times in the last 6 years, with the cross contamination, within 30 minutes, I'll get hives on my hands, which is very like allergy similar. Like a lot of people will get like an allergy breakout, but mine are like hives that turn into like scabs, and they like itch really bad. And so I was diagnosed later from a dermatologist with dermatitis herpetiformis, which is like a skin autoimmune disease developed after celiac disease.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting some steroid injections for a while with that. And then I didn't feel good about getting steroid injections, because I'm just like, I don't even know what's going inside of me. I just go to the doctor and they give me an injection and I'm okay with it. So I stopped doing that, and I just was a lot more strict. But I have just like hydrocortisone, and I'll put on, I have a little steroid foam that I'll put on my hands. So for me, it's on my hands. I'll break out in like a rash on my hands, and then like my jawline and my lips get super itchy, and they like burn, and then they almost like get scabby. It's so gross. It's so gross. I'm like so embarrassed that I'm telling you this, but
I have had celiac since I was 8 years old. I have thrown up in the
oh
worst
yeah.
places. So like,
Yes.
don't be
So
embarrassed.
that's the thing, like that's the cross contamination for me. And then I'll get like a headache, and I can take medication for the headache, and I feel like okay. But if I actually eat gluten, like say goodbye, I am throwing up for like the next couple of hours in the bathroom, like painful stomach ache and vomiting for a couple of hours, until I'm like, I need drugs to fall asleep so that this can be over by morning, you know. And then you deal with like the weeks of your body trying to heal after that. So yeah, it's no fun. And I know everyone who has celiac disease has their own,
Yeah.
you know, everyone's symptoms are different, but for me the cross contact is with the rash and the hives, and then actually getting gluten in my system and eating it is just throwing up for hours.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. And like, I think what's important to highlight about what you said is like, once you've lived with the autoimmune disease for like a certain amount of years, you start to develop things on top of it. And so it's like on the surface, it might look like you only get mildly sick from gluten, but then it's like you have all of these other things that have developed over time that make the symptoms just like so much worse.
Yeah, and that's been the case for me. I got sick over Thanksgiving, and then over Christmas, basically I just told my family like I left Christmas feeling so angry and frustrated with my family, because we got together with our family at my mom's house, and I get sick, even though, you know, she takes precautions, but my siblings don't. They just don't really they don't think about it. And I got diagnosed years after I had left home, so it's not like my family is aware of it either. You know, I was 26. It's not like I was a young kid and my parents were like, oh, we got to figure this out for you. So it's still a big struggle with my family. And I always leave family gatherings really frustrated and angry. And I'm like, I'm never coming back. But I'm trying to figure out ways to help them understand me, you know, and that's what I have found to be really difficult lately.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely like a huge mental ball game. So besides social events at home, can you talk to me about eating out and like what it's like to eat out with 3 different restrictions?
So I don't know what it's like in Denver. I went to Denver a couple of years ago, and I had just gotten diagnosed with celiac disease, and I went to Just Be Kitchen. Have you ever been there?
Love Just Be Kitchen. They're like
I went
perfect.
there.
You like go in and you're like, I have this allergy, and they're like, I
Yes.
got you.
And that was like one of the first times I had eaten out since being diagnosed. And I had like looked them up before we went to Denver. And I was like, I don't care how far we have to travel. Like, I want to go to this restaurant, Just Be Kitchen. Anyway, so Utah there's a lot of great restaurants here. There are probably 3 or 4 restaurants that I feel 100% safe eating at, because their whole menu's gluten-free. And then they maybe have like one item, like a pita bread or like a piece of toast for one menu item, and so it's very there are a handful of places that I find really safe that I'll eat at, and like, if friends are going out and we're going to go eat somewhere, I just pick up that before we go and then I eat it at another restaurant. But I do use the Find Me Gluten Free app, but I don't find it's super helpful because not everybody leaves a review, and then you're going and looking and it was like the last review was a year and a half ago and you're like, this isn't helpful, and so eating out for me has been not terrible because there are enough restaurants where I live that I can go pick something up from there and take it to wherever we're going to have a gathering with friends. But I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I've gotten sick at a restaurant just because I know which ones are safe for me and which ones aren't.
Right. So it sounds like you have like your restaurants. What about trying a new restaurant or like traveling?
So, well, I haven't traveled in a whole year. So,
That hard.
before traveling, I try to go above and beyond for myself because it's safe for me. I'll call restaurants ahead of time and I'll ask, to speak to a manager or whatever. But there have been a handful of times where like I've been to a place and I've like asked them to make it gluten free and I've like told them about my restrictions, and then I have to be like, hello, can you change your gloves? Like, can you please change your gloves? Can you do this? And so, I think that not all employees are educated, or there are some employees who are educated and some who aren't educated about allergies in general. So trying new restaurants is risky, but sometimes I'm willing to take the risk if I know, okay, my only cross-contamination issue is going to be my hands and a little headache. But then there are times when the risk is not worth it. I don't know. I feel like I take risks sometimes, and it's probably not safe, but sometimes I do.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say that like if you're really aggressive about it, you can go to any restaurant. I've had celiac disease since I was 8 years old, and like I just go in and I'm like, you need to do this, 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 and this, and like ready, set, go. And I'm like, I'm very serious about this. So like, I think a lot of the problem lies in like people who aren't willing to speak up.
Yeah, and you're just scared and you're timid because you don't want people to think you're annoying or being bossy. But it's better to just be like, let me just talk to a manager. Like, let me explain this to you. Right. I'm here paying money to eat at your restaurant. Like, make sure that it's safe for me.
Exactly. And like sometimes it's just like the asking questions is a lot. Like it gets old. Yeah, so can you tell me like when you eat out or like try new places where you kind of have to like go through the process to make sure that's safe, like how that makes you feel, or like what that process is like having to do it like over and over again?
So I feel like I am too bold to a degree, but my husband is way more bold than me. So he'll be like, no, like she said this, like, can you double check the fryer? Can you double check this? Like, don't, especially if like a waiter or waitress is like, I think so. And I'm like, I'll be like, well, I don't want you to think so. I want you to know. Like, I want you to know so I'd rather you go ask a manager or have a manager come talk to me because I don't want to just trust I think so.
Right.
So I feel like over the years I've gotten more bold, but it's also really helpful that my husband's like, my champ, and he's always helping me too. He's always like, I'm gonna, and if he plans a surprise or something for us, he'll call ahead, or he'll know that it's a specific restaurant that is safe, and he'll do the research. So I don't know. I feel like
doing that research in advance, what does that feel like? The fact that you even have to do that.
Well, this is what the hardest part about traveling is like, oh, like you have to know, because you can't just be like, oh, we're traveling, we're going to go to this city, we're going to California for the week. And this has happened, we go to California and I'm like, well, I don't know for sure, because this, for example, the Find Me Gluten-Free app, the last review was 6 months ago, and the last review before that was a year ago. And so I'm like, I have to do all the legwork, and I have to call, and it's just like time consuming and frustrating, because one, you're usually hangry at that point. So you're like pissed that you have to call somebody, because you're just like, we just need to find somewhere to eat, and the app isn't being super helpful or whatever. And it's frustrating, and you're just like, you end up being frustrated and mad that you have an autoimmune disease. So I feel like frustration is a feeling I feel a lot when traveling. And we were supposed to go to Paris this year, and then COVID happened. And so I just in preparation for going to Paris, I was just like really stressed out about the food situation. And I'm just like, I don't speak French when I get there. I'm nervous, and I'm going to be like, French people hate Americans. So I'm going to go there and be just like this idiot American girl that like needs to figure out gluten-free. And it caused me a lot of stress. And I was like, this is why traveling is, hard, because you hope for the best, but honestly, expecting the worst, and it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in your own area, like outside of traveling, having to go to like the same 3 or 4 restaurants, are you just content with that at this point, or how it is,
I'm content, but there are some restaurants that I feel like I just wish that, or I've been there before, like before my celiac disease, and I was like, they only would need to make like 2 or 3 changes, and they could cater more to this community, and then it's like, but I don't have the guts to be like, yo, listen, can you please not serve this? And then you guys can have a whole other audience coming to your restaurant,
That's my job. That's what I'm
doing. Yes. You can do that part. And then I'll reap the benefits.
Don't worry, I got you there. On that note, so what we are doing is we are creating these types of resources. We are gathering information from restaurants, working directly with them to create allergen menus, and also resources that outline their cross-contact procedures. So how would having that type of information, like in advance of coming to a restaurant, affect your eating out experience in general?
I just feel like I would be more trusting. Like if they laid out, like even if it was laid out, like against what I would need, it would just be more helpful information. Like, oh, they do have a lot of great salad options, but it doesn't list here that they changed their gloves, or it does list here that they changed their gloves. Like if that's like a mandatory thing, like after you've handled gluten or handled, for me, it would be gluten. So it's like if somebody's handled gluten, but in the information in the app, it says like, we change our gloves if we see that they have this specific allergen, and we change the tongs, and we change this. It would just be like such a stress reliever knowing that I don't have to go in asking like, can you please change your gloves? Can you get different tongs? Can you tell everyone in the staff? Like, you know what I mean? It would just be nice to know that like, that's a statement that they have available for me. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Because it's like a lot of them already do it, but we don't know. So then we just have to like ask over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know what your app looks like yet, but I'm really excited to see. Have you guys launched it yet or no? Did you say?
Yeah, we just got approved on the App Store. We are in Denver. And then at the end of the month, we're going to do like a big social launch. So I'm really excited.
Are you going to go on Shark Tank?
I can go on Shark Tank. I don't know. Maybe.
You should.
I was at that show when I was younger. I was like, oh my God, I want to be on Shark Tank.
We love Shark Tank. And anytime someone comes on Shark Tank with like an idea for allergies or like anything gluten-free, I'm like, I'm buying that. I'll buy that. Like I love supporting people like that. So I'm curious about the app. I think it's going to be really awesome to be able, and you said that you'll be able to input like what allergens you have and your severity. So then based on the order that they get.
Right. So it's like attached with instructions, right? So like you put in, severe to gluten, and severe means like change gloves, like clean down countertop, like new utensils, take ingredients from under the line. So it's like these preset things that our team knows because we have allergies. And then because you said gluten severe, like that with the preset instructions get sent to the restaurant.
That's awesome. That's going to be so helpful. I just like wish you all the best luck in the world, because that is going to help so many people. Like, I feel like I'm going to cry. Like, thank you for going above and beyond and doing that for people that need it, because it's a lot of stress, and it causes emotional trauma too, to, you know, people, adults, and then not only like kids, it's like their whole life, like you. It's like, it's so hard for them to have in certain social gatherings. It's just like a stress and a burden. So
it's something you kind of take for granted.
Yeah.
You don't realize that it's a thing that you have until you don't have it, and then you're like, you know what? That's a luxury, being able to just order food.
Yes, it is a luxury. So
cool.
Well, that's so awesome. I'm so happy for you, and it's really going to be great. You'll have to. I follow the Instagram, so I'll be following along to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure it will help a lot of other people feel like they're not alone, because, you know, we truly all are in this together. Like, there are so many other people struggling with this. So I appreciate you taking the time and really being open and honest about, you know, what you've been through.
Thank you. Thanks, Kayla. It was so nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks.